Lisa, his headline there, clearly this dramatic statement, quote, "When I looked in his eyes, I saw a defeated man already found guilty for fraud." No love lost. But these fireworks that we came on with, Michael Cohen said he didn't see him actually take the stand. It was for comments we showed at the top of the hour, a comment Donald Trump clearly made about the judge and his clerk that cost him $10,000 and a threat that the next time the punishment will be, quote, worse.
Yeah, Nicole, it was absolutely startling to see. And when Cohen just said that he didn't see that, let me explain to our viewers why. Cohen, as the witness, was not brought into the courtroom until the court was ready for his testimony. Therefore, when the judge was examining Trump, Cohen and his lawyers were still far away from the action. What I found really interesting and even historic today was not only was Trump on the stand, and it's the first time I can recall we've seen his testimony in a court of law, but that the first person to pass judgment on his credibility, Judge Arthur Engoron, made a very quick judgment. I've heard what you have to say, Mr. Trump. I find it not credible. I'm fining you $10,000, and the next time it will be worse. Judge Engoron has already stated in a written order that those penalties can increase up to and including possible imprisonment. Obviously, there's a lot of distance between $10,000 and possible imprisonment, but I really hope that Trump and his lawyers take Judge Engoron to heart, because he is a person who has been steadfastly patient with them, but at some point that patience is going to run out, and it almost did today. Judge Engoron's relationship with his law clerk is clearly a close one, but he took umbrage at the suggestion that his law clerk is either partisan or the ones making the ultimate decision. He made clear to the parties, I make the final decisions, not my law clerk.
You know, I want to, Andrew Weissmann, deal with this specter of prison time with you. I mean, this case doesn't represent the threat of incarceration for Donald Trump. The Mar-a-Lago documents case, yes. Georgia, RICO, yes. Jack Smith's election interference case before Judge Tanya Chutkan, yes. But this one, and as everyone has said, he's already been found guilty of fraud. This is about assessing the punishment, the damages for that conclusion. But it doesn't hold any risk of jail time unless, in the words of Judge Engoron, Trump continues to defy this very narrow gag order to not threaten, malign, intimidate, and endanger the safety of his clerks. What is wrong with someone who is basically running through the red flag, I guess, being waved in front of him?
I think I'm going to channel Neil Kochel here, because I think this is what's going on. You have a day that, as Lisa said, should have been simply about civil liability, where Michael Cohen on the stand made admissions that are very damaging to his credibility. Obviously, the judge is the ultimate decider what to believe, any or all or none of what he said. But he made very serious admissions about his having lied in the Senate, in Senate interviews, and in federal court, not once but twice, to Judge Pauley when he pled guilty. So this could have been a day where there were just legitimate references to undermine his credibility, and in very, very serious ways that you could have taken that route. Instead, this is, I think, a very deliberate strategy. And as the judge found, it was palpable that this was a reference to the law clerk, not to Michael Cohen, where Trump is, I think, deliberately playing to his base and goading the judicial system as part of a strategy in terms of his base, in terms of his political campaign, and playing the victim. So I think this is quite intentional on his part, because it would have been so easy to just go with the facts today, instead of making the story, as Lisa said, about his comments about the law clerk and being fined yet again for violating a judge's order.
So, Neil, if we take Andrew's frame, I mean, I guess what Andrew's saying is this isn't about all of us figuring out what Trump's trying to do legally and where the facts land, it's maybe turning the focus on the legal system and asking the question, what does the legal system do in response to brazen defiance from Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think Andrew has it absolutely right, Nicole. But I would just start with what an extraordinary moment just happened in court. I mean, you have the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, and current criminal defendant and current civil defendant, Donald Trump, testifying in open court and having a judge say, I find you not credible. And Trump occasioned this by basically having blatant disregard for a judge's orders. Andrew and I, and Lisa, we all know if a judge tells you not to comment about something, you shut up, plain and simple. And here the judge had good reason for this gag order. He feared violence and feared intimidation. And what's Trump's defense? Oh, I wasn't doing it against a clerk. I was doing it, saying it about Michael Cohen. I mean, it speaks volumes about Trump's character that his defense for his remarks is used actually launching a public attack on a witness instead of on a clerk. That's his defense. And, you know, I worry about it for the future because I think that this $10,000 fine is not that large in the end, you know, certainly not for Trump. I mean, if the trial's proved anything, it's that Trump isn't as wealthy as he wants people to think he is. But $10,000 fine is not going to do it. And if this behavior continues, as I suspect it unfortunately will, I think we are looking at the prospect of jailing the former president.
You know, Russ, there is an historic sort of thud, right, to hear that sentence uttered. There's also something so on brand about the buffoonery, about the fraud. I mean, this is how he rolls. This is what your meticulous Pulitzer Prize-winning reporting yielded years and years and years and years and years before this lawsuit even existed. This is the same Trump story. This is the same reaction to reality, which is that Trump's wealth was never as big as he said it was. All of it came from his father. He squandered and lost a lot of it. He didn't grow it. He actually shrunk it, a word he seems allergic to. And today, the big fraud, as has been found in a court of law, not being described by a news anchor, couldn't take it, couldn't take the heat, lost any ability to control his impulses. I have Vizslas, and so all of the training of that breed is about impulse control, teaching them not to run after the squirrel and not to roll in horse poop. Trump has less impulse control than a hunting dog. Couldn't keep himself out of trouble. But the story has to be so familiar to you.
Absolutely. That's the first thing I thought when I heard about this was he just has throughout his life impulse control problems. And you have to remember how he got in this spot, right? It was being too cute by half, where he says that some horrible things about this clerk, one of which is that because she had a picture taken with Chuck Schumer, she must be Chuck Schumer's girlfriend somehow. I think that reads on about a fourth grade level. I can't believe that felt worth saying to him even, other than just as kind of a cheap jab. And then we get back here today where again he loses control, I think. And he says something else that's too cute by half. Well, I wasn't talking about the clerk. I was talking about the person sitting on the other side of the judge. It's just absurd. And that is a current that runs through his life. It's part of his sort of rhetorical method, if you will, that he doesn't actually address the substance of most anything. He's misled while he's created like motives about people. That's what he does. He has this magical superpower to read people's mind and figure out why they're really criticizing him. And it's never because the facts. It's never because they think he lacks judgment or character or ability. It's always because they have some hidden bias against him. He's being persecuted because he's a member of the Republican Party, because he's a rich kid, because he's on television all the time. He always finds some other reason, and he doesn't ever address those things. And if he gets in a pinch, he'll just filibuster. You've seen that in interviews throughout the years. You've seen it in depositions. He just keeps talking about everything except the substance of the matter. And then he leaves and says, I'm out of time here. And I think that's what was amazing to me overall about today was Alina Habba's main job, I believe, today in cross-examining Michael Cohen was to make Michael Cohen lose his cool. And she seems to have succeeded in the exact opposite of that. She made her client lose his cool. And that's why we're talking about all this now.